Hi, everyone. If you missed either yesterday or today, our lesson, we started talking about parabolas. And so you should remember from last week, I gave you a brief introduction. So rather than linear equations, we're now working with what are known as quadratics. And we'll get to what I mean by this, but our quadratics are going to produce parabolas. And so parabolas are U-shaped curves, and they either open up or they open down. And the vertex is whatever the highest point or the lowest point is on the parabola. So if it points up, it's going to have a lowest point, and if it points down, it's going to have a highest point. The other thing we need to worry about is x-intercepts, so where it crosses the x-axis. And due to the U-shape, odds are it's going to have two x-intercepts. However, there are special cases we'll eventually get to where it has only one or it has none. The next piece is we got to know formats. And so if I say y is equal to a times x minus something to the second power plus something, that something is the vertex. So think of the x value and y value of that highest or lowest point. That's going directly into this equation. A, we're going to have to experiment with because it can do a few things. It can stretch if it's a greater number than 1. It can shrink if it's a fraction or decimal between 0 and 1. And it can flip. So if the a value is negative, it'll flip. So let's take a look at some examples there. So in today's assignment, if you don't have it open already, I would open it because this is the second and third slide. So this first one says using vertex form. So if I'm looking at these blue points here, I can already see that it would be possible for a U to go through them, and the low point of that U would be right here at -4, 1. So that right there would be my vertex. And so if you remember, my format is a times x minus something to the second power. If you hold shift and then hit 6, that's going to create a second power. Or you can click the keypad and click this a to the second, and that'll do the same thing. So here's our format. Now what I'm going to say is always start with the a value as 1. Eventually we'll look at adjusting it, but for now it's a good base. Now, as I said, our vertex is -4, 1. So the format says x minus the x value of my vertex, which would be -4, plus the y value of my vertex, which would be 1. Notice how with the -4 and the +1, it now goes through the vertex -4, 1. However, right now it does not match these 2 points, and you can tell that it's got to be stretched. And so maybe I say, what if a is 3 instead? Well, now I've stretched it too much. So I'll throw in a 2 instead, and sure enough, I've stretched it so that it now matches all 3 points. All right, so that is our first case. Now I'm going to take a look at these 3 points. And it looks like a U is going to be able to fit in here, and it's going to have a high point of 5, 7. So now following my format, once again, I'm just going to make a 1. I'll change it later. X value of my vertex is 5. And the y value of my vertex is 7. So clearly, I now have this in good shape. If I had accidentally put in like x minus -5, notice how it would have been way over on the left side. So if something like that happens, just watch out for your negatives versus positives. So now I can tell that this parabola goes through the proper vertex. The problem is, clearly it's upside down. So as noted before, the a value can flip. If I make it a negative, there I go. I've got a flipped parabola that goes through the proper vertex. And I don't need to change the 1 anymore because it's already going through these. All right, so that is vertex form for us. Our alternative form is going to be what's known as factored or intercept form. And what this does is it uses a again. It does the exact same thing, stretches, flips, all that good stuff. But it's going to use our x-intercepts. So our vertex plays no role in factored or intercept form. So going on to slide 3, you've got 2 possible parabolas. I'm going to start with the blue one. And you'll notice that it has an x-intercept of -1 and +2. So once again, our format is going to be a times x minus 1 x-intercept times x minus another x-intercept. With that said, once again, I'm going to keep a as 1. X minus my first x-intercept is at -1, so I'll have minus a -1. My second x-intercept is at +2, so I'll have x minus 2. And now I have a parabola that goes through the proper x-intercepts, but it clearly hasn't stretched enough. So maybe I say, oh, if I double it, no, that's not quite enough, so maybe I jump to 4. Now I've stretched it too much, so I'm going to backtrack. Sure enough, 3 is the one that stretches it so that it now matches all 3 points. And notice how this third point I gave you actually isn't a vertex, and so we couldn't have even used the other format. All right, so now I'll take a look at the red points. This time I have x-intercepts of 3 and 5. So I'll keep a as 1. I have x minus 3 times x minus 5. And sure enough, it goes through 3 and 5. Now I got to alter this one. And you can already tell if it's going to be a U-shape, it's got to be upside down. So right away, I'm going to say, make this a -1. It's now upside down, but I need to stretch it some more. So it's looking pretty close, so maybe a -2. And sure enough, it's stretched and it's flipped, so it's good to roll. So now at this point, as you move through, your goal is to at least get through challenge number 6 on the following slides. In a case like this, I would look and I'd say, oh, I can already tell I have a vertex of 0, 0, and that should clue me in that vertex form is going to be the way to go. So in this case, I'm going to say y equals 1 times x minus 0 to the second plus 0. And sure enough, with a vertex 0, 0 and an a value of 1, I'm good to go. From here on out, everything else you do, you're going to have a check my work option, and it should plot things automatically for you. But each of the challenges is actually going to get easier if you choose the proper format. One like this, if you were to try intercept format, you would have a very, very hard time. But if you notice, every single one of these curves has a vertex. And so that should clue you in that vertex form might be the appropriate one. With that said, reach out if you have questions. Otherwise, please wrap this up ASAP, and please tune in live during your in-person slot for a Google Meet. That's going to make your life a lot better because you can ask questions.